Yeah, we're good.
Recording. Okay. So today, one of the things that I'm going to talk about, I probably spent about 6 months playing on EC2, trying to do various things. And so one of the things I want to do today is take those experiences and try to apply them to doing some sort of a pen test lab. Now, this doesn't have to be like a pen test lab, but it could be sort of a one-off machine that you spin up for, say, for testing some new tool or anything like that. There's, I'm going to look at a few things because obviously for between $500 to $800 you could build your own. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go through some of the pros and cons of each. And I think in the end, for at least for the type of thing that I was looking for, that using EC2 just to do sort of one-off labs on a periodic basis seemed to work well, and in the long term would probably be cheaper, and it also offers a lot more flexibility in terms of dealing with being able to just have, like, you already have the operating systems with the licenses, so you don't have to worry about that. It's easy to upgrade your processor, your memory, anything like that you can do without having to go out and purchase more hardware. Okay, so for those, so this is me on Twitter. I come from Northern Virginia, which is right outside of DC. Do we have any people here? All right. Any Nova hackers here? All right, we got a few, so thanks for showing up. So I started my career in security probably about early 2000s-ish. One of the cool things that I got in is sort of I got in on the ground floor of whenever web application security was coming out, and I just had a blast. It was awesome, and I knew that security was something that I wanted to do as a career for the long term. Unfortunately, I had to move on in terms of like career decisions. Now, I was still doing security, but I was doing, in order to progress up the ranks. This is similar to the talk to the keynote this morning, where you can start out doing all this fun hacker stuff, and then at some point you have to grow up and you get into management, and then you kind of lose being able to do some of that fun stuff. But so I got into security engineering, so that's fun. Unfortunately, that led to doing FISMA, CNA type work. Has anyone done that? Anybody? You? Okay, one person that does stuff for the federal government. And then that led to doing awesome things like writing proposals and just a whole lot of things which seemed cool at the time from the business sense. But so I was creating a lot of this. Unfortunately, there was all this cool stuff that was going on, and it was very frustrating because all I'm doing is creating this. So that made me want to do this. So I thought a little bit. So now I'd say for the past 3 years, I've been more doing like trade studies on different security tools, doing just various sort of applied research type stuff, and most recently I'm going to start teaching a class for the company that I work for. So still doing, I'm still creating some of this, so I get to drink better versions of this, and in the evening when I have time, because I have more time now since I'm not creating all that huge amount of paperwork, I spend my time trying to do some sort of hands-on stuff to kind of get back to the hacker roots and learn all those things. Which I try to showcase on a website that I run, which is novainfosec.com. It's sort of a local site for people that are in the DC area. As you can tell, I've put some BSides stuff up recently. I just want to say thanks to some of the people that have, indirectly paid for me to be here too. So there's Milton Security, Bob Security, and TrainAce. So if anybody's here, what would be really cool is if you would tweet out, just to each of them saying, hey, thanks for sponsoring Grecs. So that would really help. So I can continue my little side job. I don't really make that much money, but it's more of, I want to get to the point where it just sort of pays for itself on the website. So anyway, now I'm a happy panda. All right, so to the core of what I want to talk today about is, first I'm just going to go through a quick intro of some of the background of why I'm doing this, some pros and cons of each of the different solutions, and then also get a detailed look into the Amazon services and what they offer and how you can set those up to be your virtual lab. Then I'm going to go through sort of a quick setup and conclusion. A few caveats here. This was the first presentation that I've ever tried to do in Google Docs, so so I've spent a lot of time trying to transition stuff over. So if stuff's sort of out of whack, please take that into consideration. And then also too, this is just the start for me. I definitely want to take this a lot further. So I'm just sort of giving the basics now, but going forward, I really want to set up a pretty complex lab and run it on a regular basis, and then do some sort of a cost analysis. What's the point where it's more efficient for you to purchase the actual hardware and run it out of your house versus just using the EC2 stuff. Okay, so the goals, like I said, this is just I wanted an enclosed lab to play on. A lot of times I'm on travel, and it's very hard to access lab, like a home lab. Now you can use things like DNS and set up an ESX server and sort of VPN in, back in, but that kind of works, kind of doesn't. You can, depending on the bandwidth that your broadband provider gives, it may work well, it may not. And kind of it's accessible from anywhere, which kind of what I talked about. And then the thing that I really like is that you only pay for what you're using. I mean, and it's easier in terms of, I think maybe to get started, you probably spend about $500 to $800 to set up your own home lab with using something like ESXi. But there are advantages, like with your home, with that, like you don't have any licenses, so you're gonna have to go out, and unfortunately, TechNet isn't available, or you can get it, but you have about a month. So you get licenses and a lot of stuff like that. But the nice thing is you only pay for what you use. In terms of how what I'm planning on using it for, I don't think this is going to be something that I'm going to set up and just run the whole month. This is going to be something where maybe something's going to come in at work, maybe a new tool comes out, and so what I'll do is just spin up my VMs, VPN out into my private lab, and test things, see how things work, and then probably just shut them down and move on. So I kind of relate it to it's a lot easier to swallow just paying, say, $10 per month than coming up with between $500 and $800 to set it up, and then all the research that you'd have to go in to get it working the way you want. And then also, I relate this to, it's sort of like a car payment, but you only pay for when you drive. So the car sitting in the garage really isn't going to do that. And then the other thing was to just get a more in-depth understanding of the cloud and how it works. So a lot of people, and I've been here since Saturday, and I've had several discussions with, hey, well, why not just set up your own home machine and do it that way? So between $500 to $700, you can get a low-end Dell server. You can do ESXi for free. There are, I think they call them white boxes. There's a site that's dedicated to it, where you can actually get a pretty cheap old desktop for say $100 to $200 and set that up as a white box, and that can work well too. And then the other option is just having your normal laptop and then just having VMware and just running a few VMs. At least personally, I was looking for something a little bit heavier. And the other thing that I like is that if I'm doing something, say like malware analysis, even though it's in a VM, I would rather have that be doing that up somewhere that's not on my hardware infrastructure. And the other thing too is it's avoid carrying around like a big Hawken laptop, sort of like one of those big Alienwares. So I already touched on some of the use cases, like just teaching yourself or trying to learn on your own. I mean, and this could be, say, commercial security tools, but it could also just be new tools that come out on a regular basis. And then what I plan to kind of use it for too is maybe throwing up ad hoc labs, say, for doing classes and webinars and things like that. So like the past few talks that I've given have been on malware analysis, and so one of the goals was to set up some sort of lab that people do a webinar and then people could VPN into it and have VMs set up for them there. So the pros, at least for me, there's no space required. So if you have a significant other, they may not be kind of cool with you having this big server, in their closet. So, so that was a big factor for me. I talked about upfront costs. You only pay for what you use. You don't have to come up with a big like $700 to get that server. And no, not that it's a huge issue, but you don't have to worry about the increase in electrical costs. Availability, it's accessible anywhere, anytime. I mean, I can take my iPhone and I can start up all my VMs, and then I can just add SSH or RDP into them. So wherever I am, if I'm at home, if I'm on travel, if I'm at work, whatever, all you need is internet connection and then some sort of VPN client so that you can connect into your private network. And the other pro is just the machines are very flexible, so you can easily add, augment, or remove machines, based on what you need. You can go with they call them AMI for Amazon something, or Amazon machine images. So you can go with the standard ones that they provide, and they have tons of stuff. So anything from all the different, like the licensed stuff from all the different Windows versions to they have appliances. So say on one assignment I was looking at what was formerly the Asaro security gateway thing. Well, they had an appliance and I didn't have to set up. I could just spin up that VM and test it out. But it's easy to then you can create customized ones too. So you start with one of theirs, and then you customize it, and then you can create your own AMI from that. And then you can also create your own AMIs. So the easiest way that I found to do that is you actually build it on your workstation using something like VMware, and then they have scripts that you can run that automatically put that up into your listing of AMIs, and then from that you can spin up those images. And the thing that I like too is it's just very easy. Like say you put something up and it just seems to be running slow. Like one of the things that I did was run Security Onion, and I started out running like a micro instance, and it was just a dog, So it was very easy just to go in and say, hey, I'm going to up that, up the RAM, up the processor. I mean, it cost more when I did that, but at least you have that option. So other pros. Oh, and by the way, that's not my wife. So anyway. So pros. One of the things that I said earlier was that Microsoft TechNet. I forget the exact date, but you have a few weeks to purchase that before they do away with it. So the nice thing about that is that you could, for $200 per year, you could get access to, everything from way back to, DOS, whatever, 3.1 or Windows 3.1, all the way up to, Windows 8, all the different server versions. And so a lot of people would use that when they build labs because they could set up a real holistic lab, and they were licensed too. I mean, the terms of service, you weren't supposed to use it for commercial purposes, but you know, it was just a nice option. Well, they've done away with that, and so that's where I think Amazon has or any, not just Amazon, but any of the cloud providers having an advantage, because you know, they come with licensed software. So the OS, and then you don't have to worry about any trials or timeouts or anything like that. And then also, there's no dependencies on your home broadband. So if that's where you're hosting it, you don't have to worry about, you know, oh, I can download stuff at 50 gig, but I don't have to upload it like 128K. So it's probably not going to work too well. So cons is, for some reason, Amazon does not provide desktop AMIs, and seems reasonable because their goal is to provide servers so that people can outsource their infrastructure there. But like I said, you can go out to, say, eBay or any site where you can get retail licenses. You can create them on VMware and then import them as an Amazon API. But in reality, too, there's a lot of you know, you can use server as a good desktop too. So you have that option. And then there are third-party services where you can have virtual desktops that actually use the Amazon infrastructure. I'm still looking into that, whether you can put them into your private VPC or if you're excluded from doing that. You know, cost could be a pro or con because it depends on how much you use it, the different machine types. As an example, I was just doing Windows servers, and they seemed pretty cheap. And then I ran SQL Server, like one that had SQL Server built in, and it was like 3 times the cost. So it depends on the different machine types too, and then also the length of use. But you know, I think for my purposes, where I was going to do some periodic testing, just as long as you start them up, use them, and shut them down, it's really not that expensive. And also the con is you can't do anything without the network. So if you don't have network connectivity to Amazon or to your VMs or to your AMIs, you know, you really can't do much. Okay. So the next part of this is I wanted to get into, you know, what is the cloud? So does anybody who's familiar with the cloud? Anybody who's not familiar with the cloud? Have you ever heard of the internet? I don't know. No? All right. What is that?
What's a computer?
Yeah. So first, I come from a federal government contracting background, so NIST has a nice definition here, which is basically this picture. You can't read it on the screen there, but there's 5 essential characteristics, which I can't really read because it's too small. But the different service models are infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So, you know, software, things like Gmail, platform, you know, you might have like a .NET platform you can develop on, and in infrastructure as a service. So that's basically what Amazon is, or what their core structure is, and all that is. And like when I started getting into this, everyone's like the cloud, and I thought it was this magic unicorn thing. And then I found out, oh, you're just running VMs on their hardware. I was like disappointed, but that's all it is. It's just like instead of running VMs on your local, you're just able to spin up things and run them on other people's infrastructures. Amazon basically provides 2 types. There's your standard EC2 instances, and then there are instances within VPCs, which is a virtual private cloud. I have a slide, but I seem to be missing something on that slide. There it is. Once again, this is the Google Docs thing. So, first of all, you have a standalone instances. And what I don't like about them is you start out here, you have this Amazon EC2 cloud. There's some basic services that it provides. Security-wise, they have security groups, which are basically firewalls. On top of that, you can run these operating systems. And like I said, just whatever AMIs they have. And what I really didn't like about that is there was really no way to create an infrastructure with that in terms of trying to build like a pen test lab. So if I wanted to create like a domain controller and then have workstations that would be part of that, there didn't seem a way to keep that all connected, because whenever you reboot these, guess what happens? Does anybody know? They get a new IP, so so it was really hard. Now you can do things which cost a little bit more. So they basically have dynamic IPs. You can assign EIPs, which are their version, like just a static IP to it. So there's that, and but it really didn't fit what I was looking for in terms of building a lab. So that's when I really got into using the VPC, which is the virtual private cloud. And basically it has all this different structure here, and then you can spin up the EC2 instances here. And these are just private little networks that you can put security onion and then force all the traffic through that to go out your gateway. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with it. So by default, down on the bottom right there, the VPC, they come with a default DNS service, DHCP, VPN, and a gateway. So the gateway obviously is so that the machines can get out and access the internet. The VPN it's mainly for not so that you can VPN and access your stuff. It's really focused on hardware VPNs. And so their use case is if you have your infrastructure and you want to extend it to Amazon Cloud. So it basically gives you the settings to put into your hardware router so that you can have instances that are running in Amazon that are basically an extension of your internal infrastructure. With the VPC structure, you get additional, I'll call them services. Some of them are security related, some of them aren't. So you have security groups, which we already talked about. That's just basically a firewall. You have network ACLs, so that's basically the same thing, but it's stateless. A lot of overlap there. You have routing tables that you can map, and you have subnets, and then on top of that, you can run your different operating systems. And for those security folks that really don't know networking that well, this is an awesome playground to learn how firewalls work, how network ACLs work, how to set up routing tables in subnets. So that's a good place to start without having to go buy your Cisco router and try to configure it that way. It's just a nice little GUI that you can do stuff with. And then once again, the EIPs, you can assign that to the hardware VPN interface so that you can connect your corporate infrastructure up to it. And then also within each of the different operating systems, that's kind of in its own secluded pocket, but you can also assign them external IPs too, so that you can access them directly. But that's not something that I really want to do. I don't want to set up my lab and have other people just going and using it to do their stuff. But just to give a comparison between the two types of instances that Amazon has, so EC2, it's simple and cheap. And I think it's excellent for doing one-off tests, like as in the Staro security gateway thing that I was playing with. I really didn't need to put that into a whole infrastructure in order just to load it up, log in, see what all its capabilities are. Now, if I wanted to use that as a gateway, then it would make sense to move over to the VPC. But cons, dynamic public IPs by default, and also that it's very hard to set up any sort of infrastructure there. VPC, you get your private static IPs. You can also expose those through the EIPs, like I talked about on the previous slide. And you get a nice LAN infrastructure. So, for those folks that, we're familiar with networking, but we haven't actually done stuff with it, this will give you some good hands-on knowledge in terms of setting that up. The cons, it can be, the VPCs are obviously going to be more difficult to set up just because of all the infrastructure you may have to map. But like I said, the conclusion's down at the bottom there. EC2 is a very good source for doing one-off testing. Like say you want to test some security tool, you can just spin up some Ubuntu instance, load the tool up, test it, and just toss it. Or like if you want to test that tool against other, say like a web server, you would obviously have to do that and do the same thing, but if you do it in the VPC, so that you're not attacking other people, which isn't necessarily a good thing to do. So let's see. So amazingly enough, by default, creating the virtual private clouds are very easy. So just here's some of the things that I talked about here. So you have all your settings are basically here. So you have your subnets, your route tables, internet gateways, some DHCP stuff, the EIPs, and here's your security stuff. And then this is the VPN connections here. This is all the stuff for connecting into your corporate gateway, which you probably wouldn't use. But it's very easy because you just literally press, hey, I'm going to create that. You fill out a few forms, and bam, you got this whole infrastructure set up. And the only thing that's left to do is to go and spin up instances and then specify that you want those instances to be within that VPC. So whenever you push that button, this is what comes up. Now this is the wizard, so this is the easy one, but you basically get three options. So so the first one, this is basically, you basically have your VPC, and by default, each instance has private IPs, and then they also have public IPs. And so that didn't really fit for what I was looking for. The next two are sort of a combination of having a public subnet and a private subnet. And that may be useful for doing something in the future, but right now I just sort of wanted my own secluded network that I can interface with. The last one, just to get started, is probably the one that you want to go with. So this is, and it basically looks like that picture there. You have your private subnet, and they say, oh, you only have hardware VPN access. But what you can actually do is just take this out, right? And then within your subnet, within your VPC, you can spin up, there's instances for OpenVPN. So you just spin up those, and then now you can use any normal VPN client to get into your VPC. So this is just after you go through that setup process, this is what it looks like in terms of all the different settings. Nothing too exciting there. Just some examples of what the settings look like. So this is the subnet. So for this particular subnet, there's a router table. This is what that looks like. There's a network ACL, and then there's inbound and outbound. So the route table, this basically says, so you're in the 10 dot range. So any traffic, if it's heading to the 10 dot range, you're basically going to stay local. This is another way of saying the internet. So if you're going out to the internet, go to the internet gateway. And then these are basically your firewall rules here. So you right by default, they sort of are pretty open there. So definitely want to limit that. But that's not big of a deal right now because you're on your own private subnet. But once you VPN in, then you may want to tweak those depending what you choose to expose. This is sort of it's very easy to add rules too. So this is the inbound, and yes, this is what the ACL looks like. You know, it's basically the same thing as this security group, but it's static. So for the security groups, it's really easy because you just say, hey, there's a drop down here, and you say, oh, I want to allow SSH inbound. And then and then it'll automatically fill this all out, and then you specify the source. And then you can do the same thing for that outbound. And it's really easy, and it's a good way to get some hands-on activity with doing firewall type stuff too. So then the last thing is you go to your EC2 dashboard, and then you say launch instance. It comes up with this nice little wizard. You pick what you want. The key thing is that you specify that you want it to be within that VPC. And that's basically it. I could go through a little demo, I guess, if anybody's interested. I don't know how much time do I have left.
You have about 15 minutes.
15 minutes, or probably don't have enough time. But just an overview. So quick intro, pros and cons. Gave an overview of Amazon services, and just set up a conclusion. The only reason why I ever put the slide there is because all the presentation gurus say, oh, you have to, tell them what you're going to tell them, whatever. But so there's how to contact me, but I can take questions now. Anyway, yes, sir.
So you mentioned using AMIs for some stuff. Could you talk a little bit about how you automate stuff, how you spin stuff up? What if you need to customize something that there's not an API for? Do you use Chef or Puppet or anything? What's your workflow? Because you mentioned that you'll shut everything down and then spin it all back up whenever you're ready to work.
Yeah.
I assume you're not doing that manually.
Well, right now, I'm just, like I said, this is sort of the initial research stage, and so I'm not using any of those tools yet. But, yes.
How does Amazon feel about running, malicious software, hacker tools?
Something I forgot.
What are the risks of doing that?
So in my notes that didn't make it into the slide deck, I actually addressed this. But if you're going to do any sort of pen testing, they have this form you have to fill out, and in most cases, they're cool with it. But you just have to let them know so that if it pops up on their, in their SOC, they know oh, that guy's doing pen testing. In terms of, I know a lot of people have looked at doing things like, hey, I'm going to use Nmap and scan the internet, and Amazon doesn't seem, they don't like you doing stuff like that. But if it's small stuff that you're doing in your secluded environment, the other limitation that I talked about was that you don't have any desktop AMIs that you can spin up, and kind of officially, policy-wise, you're not supposed to put them there because they could, but it's more of a licensing issue. But if you can create your own and you can put it there, officially you're probably not supposed to do that, but I've never heard of anyone getting caught and having it taken down. Yes, sir.
So the EC2 versus the VPC, is there a lot more cost to go to VPC? Is there certain costs that pay?
Can you speak up, please?
Yeah. Yes, so the question was, sorry if I haven't been repeating the question. The question was, is there a cost difference if you use an instance in just if you just spin up an instance versus having that instance in VPC? And so there is no additional cost. If using the infrastructure that was showed in that one picture here, if you use their VPN here, there's usually a cost, but that doesn't apply to us. So you're basically going to spin up your OpenVPN instance, and so you wouldn't even have that cost. But yeah, there's no difference in terms of cost spinning up EC2 instances alone or solo versus having them in the VPC. Yes?
And actually in May, EC2 made a change where I think now only new customers will get only VPC. They don't have an option for the traditional.
Yep.
instance.
Yeah.
So
That's what I've noticed too.
The
So
VPC option.
so right now, recently they have the classic, and then they have the current one. So the classic is where you spin up an EC2 instance, and that's it's just sitting in their cloud. You know, it's really not connected to anything. And then running an instance in a VPC, that's sort of the new version. So yeah, I forgot to mention that. Thanks for pointing that out.
Did they change? It used to be a couple months ago that they wouldn't let you run the micro instance in the VPC. Did that change?
Yeah, that
Okay.
changed. So you can use the, well, I guess the big question is can you be on the free tier and use the VPC?
Right.
And previously, theoretically, you could, but you were very limited what you could run, but they're slowly adding more and more stuff. So the free tier is kind of another cool option too, that you can test Amazon out for a year. Now, at the end of the year, you can just create another account, I guess, but yeah.
On the form that you have to sign with them, is there anything that's like absolutely off limits? And if something bad does happen and you end up taking down a bunch of their infrastructure because of something, say some piece of malware is like being aware and jumps out and takes down half the data center, are you liable for that kind of stuff, or is that even addressed?
Well, so the question was on the pen testing form that they make you fill out, is there any, like, are you liable if
Something bad happens.
if stuff goes really wrong? And I didn't really see much like that. It's sort of, the worst they're going to do is, we're going to take it all down. Obviously, I mean, someone else could, like if you're scanning, they could come back and just, they can sue you. Any other questions? Okay. Well, good. Well, thanks. Thanks to BSides Las Vegas and for all the volunteers that make this thing happen. Anyway, that's it. And I'll be around, all through Def Con. So if you see me and want to chat, just let me know. Thanks.
That's it for the morning session. There's a lunch break for an hour, and then the rest of the sessions will continue at 3 o'clock.
3:30.
3:30.
Yes, it's an hour and a half.
That changed. Okay. All right. You want a t-shirt or a towel?
That way.
I got plenty for you.
So,
T-shirt. I'm out of t-shirts, sorry.